You've probably noticed that some homes just feel different. You walk toward the front door and there's an immediate sense of peace, security, and a quiet kind of abundance. It isn't luck, and it isn't just good architecture. Most of us treat our front entrance as just a walkway, but in ancient traditions, this is called the mouth of chi, the gateway where energy enters your life. If your entrance is empty or worse, guarded by the wrong plants, you might be accidentally blocking the very wealth and protection you've been working so hard to build. Today, we're moving beyond simple curb appeal. I'm revealing the 7 sacred plants you can place near your front door to act as spiritual sentries, filtering out negativity and inviting a flow of wealth that actually stays. And pay close attention to number 4, because it's a plant almost everyone already owns and almost everyone places incorrectly. Think of it this way: the soil right by your door is a small bank. Whatever you plant there is the deposit. What grows back, season after season, is the interest. Before we get into the 7, if gardening wisdom like this, the kind that blends the practical with the meaningful, is something you want more of, this is the place for it. Go ahead and hit subscribe, and let's get into it, starting with the plant that sets up everything else on this list. We're starting with the jade plant, Crassula ovata. In a lot of Asian and African traditions, it's called the friendship tree, and it's one of the oldest wealth symbols in home gardening. Look closely at the leaves and you'll see why. They're thick, round, almost coin-shaped, and they store water inside themselves like a small reserve tucked away for a dry season. That's not just decoration. That water storage is a genuine survival trait, the same trait that lets a jade plant sit through a mist watering without complaint. In the old symbolism, a plant that holds its own reserve and still keeps growing is a plant that mirrors what steady saving looks like. And there's something else worth noticing here, something bigger than just this one plant. Roots aren't only plumbing, pulling water out of the ground in most of these old traditions. They're described as armor, holding a line the same way an old stone wall holds a line, quietly, without needing to be watched. What's interesting is that idea doesn't belong to one culture. Entirely separate traditions, on different continents, with no contact between them for most of history, all landed on the same basic instinct: mark the threshold, and what you mark it with matters. Keep that thought close, because it comes back more than once before we're done, especially when we reach the plant most people already own and are quietly placing exactly wrong. For placement, jade wants bright light and soil that drains fast. It does not want wet feet. If you're in USDA zone 9 through 11, it can live right outside your door year-round. Further north than that, keep it in a container on the porch through the warm months and bring it in before the first frost. I've seen it in countless homes, a jade plant set just to the left of the entrance, following the old belief that the left side welcomes in what's coming toward you. Once you know to look for it, you'll start noticing it everywhere too. And here's something worth knowing on its own merit: a well-cared-for jade plant can live for 30, even 50 years. It's genuinely common for one to be passed down between generations, gifted at a housewarming the way a good tool or a family recipe might be passed down. That's its own kind of wealth, long before you even get to the folklore. One simple way to know when to water it: press a finger an inch into the soil. If it's still damp, leave it alone. Jade would rather go a week too dry than a single day too wet, and that one habit alone prevents most of the trouble people run into with it. Next is lucky bamboo, Dracaena sanderiana. First thing to know, it isn't actually bamboo at all. It's a tropical relative of the lily family that just happens to grow in those same segmented, jointed stalks. But the folklore around it gets specific in a way most plants on this list don't, and it's worth slowing down for. The number of stalks changes what it's believed to represent. 2 stalks are for love, 3 are for happiness, 5 are for wealth. 8 in particular is considered the most powerful number for prosperity in several East Asian traditions, since the shape of the number itself is thought to resemble an unbroken loop, folding back into itself. And here's where it gets a little stranger: 4 stalks are almost always avoided entirely. In more than one tradition, the word for 4 sounds close enough to the word for misfortune that most growers simply skip that number without a second thought. It's a small, almost funny detail, but it tells you something true about all 7 of these plants. The placement and the arrangement matter just as much as the plant itself. Lucky bamboo is easy to keep. It'll grow in a glass of water with a few pebbles for support, or in loose, well-draining soil, set somewhere with bright but indirect light direct sun, will actually scorch the leaves, which is the most common way people accidentally kill a plant that's supposed to be nearly impossible to kill. It's a houseplant almost everywhere outside of USDA zones 10 and 11, so don't worry about hardiness zones dictating this one. A spot near a window by your entryway, in the southeast corner of the home, if you want to follow the traditional wealth direction, is really all it needs. If you're growing it in water rather than soil, change that water out every week or two left too long. It turns cloudy and the roots start to struggle, which is almost always the real reason behind browning tips, long before it's anything more mysterious than that. From there, we move outdoors to marigold tagates. If jade and bamboo are about invitation, marigold is about protection, and it earns that reputation honestly. Across a number of cultures, from Mexico to India, marigold has been planted at doorways and carried in celebration specifically because of its color. That deep gold and orange is tied symbolically to the sun, to light strong enough to be seen from a distance, and to the kind of wealth that doesn't hide. In some Diwali traditions, it's strung across doorframes for exactly that reason, and in Day of the Dead observances, it's laid along pathways to guide something home. Different meanings, same underlying idea. Marigold marks a threshold as one worth noticing. But there's a real botanical reason marigold has stuck around in gardens for centuries, and it has nothing to do with folklore. Its roots release a natural compound into the surrounding soil that several common garden pests actively avoid. That's the plant defending its own territory, chemically, underground, where you can't see it happening. So when older traditions describe marigold as something that wards off what's unwanted, there's an actual mechanism sitting underneath that belief, working in the dark exactly where you'd expect a boundary to hold. Marigold wants full sun and isn't fussy about soil. It's grown as an annual almost everywhere. Though in the warmer zones 9 and up, it will often reseed itself and come back on its own the next year. A border of marigold flanking your front walkway does double duty. It looks like a deliberate, cared-for entrance, and it's quietly working the soil in your favor the whole season. If you've got a vegetable bed anywhere near your entrance too, tuck a few marigolds along its edge. That same pest-repelling root chemistry looks out for your tomatoes and peppers just as well as it looks out for your doorway. Now the one I asked you to wait for. Plant number 4 is the snake plant, Dracæna trifasciata, and I'd guess a good number of you watching already have one somewhere in your home right now. Across parts of Africa and Asia, the snake plant has one of the longest protective histories of anything on this list. In parts of West Africa, it was traditionally planted right at the compound gate, long before it ever became a common houseplant anywhere else. Look at the leaves, and it's not hard to see why it was chosen for that job. They grow straight up, stiff and pointed, banded in that mottled tiger stripe pattern, almost like a row of blades standing at attention. In the old symbolism, that's exactly the role they play a line of sentries, holding a boundary the way that stone wall does. There's a genuine botanical fact backing this one up too, and here's where it gets stranger. Most plants release oxygen during the day and take it back in at night. The snake plant does the opposite. It's one of a small number of plants that continues releasing oxygen after dark. It quite literally keeps working its shift while everything else has gone to sleep, standing watch when the rest of the garden has gone quiet. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes with it. Because it's such a forgiving, low-maintenance plant, people tuck it into a dark corner of a back room or a hallway. Somewhere it'll survive being ignored. But in the tradition this plant comes from, that's the opposite of where it belongs. It's meant to stand right at the threshold. Ideally, a pair of them, one on each side of the door, leaves facing outward like they're keeping watch. We treat it like furniture. But furniture doesn't breathe, and furniture doesn't stand guard. Moving it to the door isn't just rearranging decor, it's finally letting the plant do the job it was born for. It's hardy outdoors in zones 9 through 11, and in every colder zone it's simply a container plant, which makes this one of the easiest swaps on the whole list. You're very possibly just moving a pot you already own from one room to another tonight, and undoing a mistake that's been sitting there for years without you knowing it. And if you only own the one, you don't need to buy a second for that pair by the door. Snip a healthy leaf near the base, let the cut end dry for a day, and set it in soil or water. Given a few weeks, it roots on its own 1 century becoming 2, at no cost beyond a little patience. If you just realize your snake plant has been hiding in the wrong spot this whole time, tell me in the comments. I'd genuinely like to know how many of you are about to do some rearranging later today. And if this has been useful so far, a like helps this reach the next person who's about to walk right past their own front door without a second thought. We're a little past the halfway mark now, and it's worth pausing on what these first four actually have in common. Jade and bamboo were both about invitation, pulling something good toward the door. Marigold and the snake plant shifted into protection, holding a line at that same door. The last three bring both of those ideas together in a single plant each, which is part of why traditions across so many different regions kept returning to them specifically. Before we move to the next three, here's a question I hear a lot. Does the pot material actually matter? It does, and not for mystical reasons. Terracotta is porous, so it lets excess moisture escape through the sides of the pot, not just the drainage hole at the bottom. Plastic holds onto that moisture instead. For most plants on this list, that's a minor detail. For the next one, it's close to the whole game. That plant is rosemary, Salvia rosmarinus. Long before it was a kitchen herb, rosemary was a threshold plant. Roman soldiers were said to carry sprigs of it for protection on long journeys, and across the Mediterranean and much of Europe, it was hung over doors and planted along entrance paths with the belief that it kept out illness, thieves, and whatever else you didn't want crossing into the home. It shows up at weddings for good fortune and at funerals for remembrance in some of those same old customs, the same plant, standing at both kinds of doorways a life passes through. The mechanism behind that belief is almost entirely about scent. Rosemary's oils are strong enough that you catch them just brushing past the plant, and for a long time, the thinking was that a scent boundary was as real a boundary as a wall. Its scent works the perimeter of your entrance, the way an old watchman used to walk the edge of a property, back and forth, marking the line, present even when you can't see it doing the work. Rosemary wants full sun and soil that drains well once it's established. It barely needs watering at all, which makes it a genuinely low-effort plant for an entrance bed. It's hardy outdoors in zones 8 through 10. Anywhere colder, grow it in a container and bring it indoors near a sunny window before frost hits, and it'll carry you right through to spring. Give it a light trim after each flush of new growth, 2 left alone for a few seasons. Rosemary turns woody and sparse at the base, which is a shame for a plant whose entire job depends on having enough green growth to actually release that scent. Plant 6 brings us back to where the whole list started, the money tree, Pachira aquatica. And this is the one where that bank metaphor from earlier really earns its keep. What you put into the soil here is, quite literally, what you're depositing into years of growth. You've almost certainly seen one before. Even if you didn't know the name, the trunk is braided, several stems woven together as the plant grows young and flexible before the wood hardens into place. As the story is often told, the plant got its popular name from a farmer whose one struggling tree eventually made him wealthy enough that neighbors started planting their own, braiding several together for a fuller look. True story or not, it stuck for a reason. Most money trees also grow with 5 leaflets branching from a single stem, and in several traditions, that number of 5 is tied to the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, a small, complete system, growing right there in your entryway. It's a tropical plant at heart, so outside of zones 10 and 11, it lives indoors, in bright but indirect light with a bit of humidity if you can manage it. Many households place it in the southeast corner of the entryway, specifically following the same wealth corner logic as the lucky bamboo. A spot near an entryway with some natural light works well either way. This is genuinely one of the more forgiving plants on this list once it's settled in, which is part of why it stayed a favorite in homes and offices alike for generations. The one habit worth breaking early is overloving it with the watering can let the top couple of inches of soil dry out completely between waterings. More money trees are lost to a well-meaning owner who waters too often than to one who occasionally forgets. And that brings us to the 7th and final plant, basil. In many households, especially where it's kept as holy basil, Ocimum tenuiflorum, this isn't just a kitchen herb. In parts of India, it's grown in a raised pot at the very center of the courtyard, watered by hand each morning as something closer to a small daily prayer than a chore. The entrance to the home built quite literally around a single tended plant. There's a real reason it earned that kind of devotion beyond symbolism. Basil's aromatic compounds are strong enough that for centuries it's been planted at doorways and windows, specifically for that scent. The same threshold logic as rosemary, just with a warmer, sweeter presence instead of a sharp one. Sweet basil, the kind most of us cook with, carries a lighter version of that same scent, different variety, same underlying idea of a fragrant plant doing quiet work at the edge of a home. Basil wants full sun and consistently moist soil. It doesn't like to dry out the way rosemary does. In zone 9 and warmer, it can behave almost like a perennial in the right spot. Anywhere colder, it's an annual, which actually works in its favor here. Replanting it each spring becomes its own small yearly ritual, right along with everything else you're already doing for your garden. Pinch off any flower buds as soon as you see them forming once basil flowers. It puts its energy into seed instead of leaf, and the plant that was thriving all summer starts to fade fast. Now, a bonus on how these 7 actually work together at your door, because arrangement matters as much as selection. Most of these traditions favor odd numbers, 3 plants grouped together, or 5, rather than an even, symmetrical line. And there's a genuinely practical reason underneath that preference, not just a symbolic one. Air needs room to move around a plant's roots, the same way energy is said to need room to move through a doorway. Crowd too many pots together, and you're not inviting anything in. You're just cutting off airflow and setting yourself up for root rot by autumn. So less is more here. A pair of snake plants flanking the door, jade or a money tree just to one side, marigold or rosemary along the path, that's plenty. Many of these same traditions also suggest a small seasonal refresh, swapping out anything that's gone leggy or tired looking each spring, the same way you might clean out a closet at the start of a new year. It isn't about starting over. It's about not letting your entrance quietly go stale while the rest of your life keeps moving forward. And before any of that refresh even starts, there's an older, simpler step. Almost every one of these traditions agrees on clear the threshold before you plant anything at all. Sweep away dead leaves, pull any stray weeds pushing up through the cracks, wipe down the doormat, straighten whatever's gotten knocked crooked over the season. It sounds almost too basic to mention, but it's the actual first move in nearly every version of this practice, long before a single new plant goes into the ground. Whatever you believe about energy and thresholds, a clean, cared-for entrance is doing real work either way. It's the first thing anyone sees, including you, every single time you come home. And whatever you choose, make sure your walkway itself stays clear and even underfoot. A beautiful entrance that's hard to walk through safely isn't inviting anything in either. Take a second and think about which of these 7 you already have sitting somewhere in your home or garden right now. A jade plant on a windowsill. A snake plant in the wrong corner. Basil, you've been meaning to replant since spring. Whatever zone you're gardening in is going to decide which of these live outdoors year-round for you and which ones spend the winter in a pot by a window, and that's fine. None of this depends on having a perfect climate, and it definitely doesn't depend on starting from nothing. It depends on paying attention to what's already close to your front door, and on a few small corrections most people never think to make. Somewhere on this list is very likely a plant you've owned for years without ever knowing what it was quietly meant to do for you. None of this requires a landscaping crew, and it definitely doesn't require starting over. You don't earn a peaceful, abundant feeling entrance by doing more all at once. You earn it the same way you'd earn anything worth having. A little at a time, tended to instead of ignored. Moving one pot tonight, planting one border this weekend, pulling a few weeds before you even think about what goes in next. None of that is a small gesture. That's the deposit this whole list has really been about. And deposits, however small, are the only kind that ever add up to anything worth having. There's no rush to get all 7 in place by the weekend either. A garden built in a single afternoon rarely holds up the way one built season over season does. Let this be something you come back to: a plant added this month, another corrected next month, the whole entrance slowly becoming exactly what it was always meant to be standing guard over. You've spent years learning what your garden needs to grow well. This is really just the same skill, aimed at 12 square feet you've probably walked past without a second look for longer than you'd like to admit. That's not a failure, it's just where you're starting from tonight. And starting from somewhere is always how the good gardens got built in the first place. So don't think of this as the end of a video. Think of it as the first chapter of your season, the one where you finally look at that front entrance the way it deserves to be looked at. And if a protected entrance has you thinking about the rest of your garden, that same resilience carries right into your backyard beds. I've got a video on 9 heat-loving perennial herbs that hold up even in the harshest part of the season. It's on your screen now, if you want to keep going. Otherwise, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and I'll see you in the next one.